Prove it years. It's an interesting concept coming into every season. I like this way better than a hot seat meter because a hot seat meter sounds like we're begging for somebody to get fired, and none of us on this show particularly enjoy doing that. But I do think we can look across the landscape right now and find some combinations, some coaches, some players, some GMs all across the board that could be in prove it years. So let's look at coaches' regimes, and we'll start with, I think, one that we've already talked a lot about here. But in your mind, Jory, prove it year, and how do they prove it? For Daboll and Shane, what are the Giants really, what's the pressure they're really under?
Yeah, I was on radio in Washington, D.C. this week, and they asked me what coach I thought was under the most pressure or is under the most pressure, and Brian Daboll is that coach. I think that Brian Daboll, as we've talked about on this show, had the biggest feather in his cap because of his work with Josh Allen. And we've since seen Brian Daboll go on to work with other quarterbacks without significant success, and Josh Allen work with other play callers with plenty of success. Now, that doesn't mean he didn't do anything for Josh Allen, but I think when you consider variables, one of them has had success since then, and the other has really struggled. I think if I'm Giants ownership and I've made clear that 2025 you need to win, which is not the case with all of the teams that we're going to discuss today in terms of where they are in that life cycle, Brian Daboll needs to show he can galvanize a team to win some games this year, like a decent number. I would say probably at least 8 or 9, ideally 10 or 11. That even if it's on the strength of their defense, that's fine. But they need to win some games now and be competitive. And then ideally, you also want to show that Jackson Dart is being developed to be your quarterback of the future. In an ideal world for Brian Daboll, you have something like, even if it's not Drake May level of sample size, Jackson Dart playing a little bit at the end of the year and creating hope in ownership that they've got their guys. So now they'll have that scary defense, which they should have the capacity to have given the roster they built, particularly up front. And then you'll have a quarterback who you think can carry it. So yeah, I would put that as a pretty high level of prove it needing to be done.
Yeah, good luck with all that, Brian. Good luck getting to 10 wins with that roster, because it ain't happening. Like, I honestly, part of me doesn't know why they even brought them back, because you just set up a season where these guys are in an unwinnable situation. Yes, you're right. Like, if they go out and win 10 games, they'll be back. They're not going to win 10 games. They're the worst team in the NFC East, and it's not particularly close either. So unless some miracle happens like it did Daboll's first year when they made the playoffs, I don't see that happening necessarily. I went back and listened to, when I was writing a Giants preview, I watched actually on YouTube, John Mara, when they announced that those guys were coming back. And I was actually struck rewatching it, how apologetic and funereal it all seemed. Like, they were like, it was almost like, sorry guys, we had to bring him back. Like, I know nobody's excited about this. I know I'm not happy about this, but we're going to give him another shot anyway. And I was like, wow. Like, it was really eye-opening that they didn't want these guys back. I think they felt boxed in because they had gone one and done so often, or two and done, whatever. And they just felt like you gotta at least give these guys one more year out of whatever obligation you had for them. But I think they're just in an unwinnable situation. I just don't know how they could pull this rabbit out of their hat where you get to the end of the year being the last place team in the NFC East and still save your job. Like, again, maybe it's Jackson Dart, and they time it up right where Jackson Dart is peaking at the end of the year. They go to ownership and they say, look, we got this guy. We are developing him. He's going to be the next Josh Allen. Look what I did with Josh. That's a very, very narrow runway to land on, though. I don't think it can happen. And I think that they're in, again, an unwinnable situation. It's just very tough to imagine this group leading the Giants next year.
If they can get to 8 or 9 wins, or they can show incredible, just absolute Jaden Daniels, like, oh my God, we've got our guy out of Jackson Dart, sure, they can keep their jobs. I just don't think any of those things can happen that quickly. So it's just, this is that moment where, I hate to keep planting the comparison, but I think it's an apt one. We all knew a year ago that the Bears were failed, that Eberflus was not, they had a dead man walking lame duck coach that was just going to waste the first year of Caleb Williams until they wiped it out and brought somebody in that could actually maximize the quarterback's potential. We were all right about that one. It was pretty obvious to see. I feel like this is kind of the same thing. It's the Spider-Man meme. And right now the Giants staff is looking at the Eberflus Bears staff from last year, and they're all pointing at each other saying, God, we look a lot alike. So unfortunately for the Giants and for Giants fans, I don't think there's a happy ending there. What about, we talked about Miami earlier. What about Miami? Because Mike McDaniel, Chris Grier, the GM there, but McDaniel particularly, Jory, this one's weird for me because McDaniel was not even just a darling. Like, McDaniel became a superstar quickly in the minds of a lot of people, not just for his quirky personality, but for the way that offense actually looked. And I'm trying to be fair and balanced here because, my God, they have had quarterback health issues that I wouldn't put on any coach. But at this point, it feels like something is wrong in Miami. So how much of a prove-it year do you think the Dolphins are facing?
I still think it's more of a prove-it year for general manager Chris Grier than it is for Dolphins head coach Mike McDaniel. I think that not only has I do think he's done good things for the culture. I know we're not seeing it right now, but I also think that he's kind of got a team where he lets them say whatever they want. So as much as we can say, like, him making these comments seems like everything's breaking loose. I think Mike McDaniel's also like, I'm going to be who I am. You guys be who you are. And if that means you say something that people don't usually say out loud, I'm fine with that. And I don't care as long as you ultimately are doing what you want for the team. So I do think Chris Grier has a prove-it year. And I think in part because he extended Tua Tagovailoa. And I do think that both from a health standpoint and a production standpoint, you need to see the return on that mega deal if you want to be able to keep your job. But I don't really think it's a prove-it year for Mike McDaniel. I mean, every year is a prove-it year for everyone. So in that regard, yes. But I don't view Mike McDaniel as being on the hot seat. I think that when you look at what Brian Flores did beforehand, and I know he's having a lot of success right now as defensive coordinator, but Tua Tagovailoa has been very honest about the ways that he felt Brian Flores broke him down and Mike McDaniel built him up and allowed him to play at the high level. And that's what you want. If you're going to succeed, you need to succeed with Tua because he's your quarterback right now. So I don't think you get rid of the coach who both schematically and culturally has allowed your quarterback to have that success.
It's very interesting. Let me ask you, because I'm curious to know, do you think he gets more time because they understand they've kind of not done him right by the roster? Like, hey, the two of the five best Dolphins players last year were Jalen Ramsey and Jonnu Smith, and you just traded them away. Like that. Do you think that offers him a little more patience from ownership because you kind of understand we put you in a bad year? Does it?
Yeah. I mean, again, that's what's interesting is that the Giants, despite not being ready to win, have a mandate from ownership. You need to win in 2025. We'll get to the Browns, but they are an example of an ownership that does not have that mandate. It's not that they don't want to win, but they're not saying our primary strategic goal is 2025 in the way that the Pittsburgh Steelers are saying that.
And indeed, I do think this is a tough year for McDaniel in that if they do take another step back, let's say they do finish 6-11, 5-12, I think that's on the table for them. It really is, unless Tua just comes back and it looks great and stays healthy, and I hope he does all year, by the way. Then what do you do with Mike McDaniel? Do you really give him another year? I don't know that they will. I'm interested to see how it all shakes out because we have seen the culture issues. We have seen kind of the shine off of Mike McDaniel. I like Mike McDaniel as a coach. I think he is a good offensive mind, but this is a results-based business in many ways. And if you take steps back 2 years in a row, I just wonder if they just clean house and everything gets reset. I mean, we've talked about where's the exit ramp for Tua's contract and all this kind of, and Tyreek, let's get out of this too, because that's a pain in the behind. So I don't know. I do think this is a prove-it year for Mike McDaniel, but I get where you're coming from on just saying, hey, look, this guy did a good job, really good job with our quarterback. Maybe we just need to hand him give him a better roster to deal with because we've let a lot of talent walk out the door, and that's not necessarily Mike McDaniel's fault.
A lot of times I ask myself, if that coach hit the open market, would people be flocking to hire him? And we saw the answer for that, for example, for Eberflus as a head coach. I don't honestly know the answer, and I'm willing to say that for Mike McDaniel. Like, it certainly seems like the way he was regarded when he got the job and some of the things offensively, like the first 2 years of that offense were a joy to watch. Just the pre-snap motion alone it was exciting. It just looked creative. You never knew what was coming at you. And so there's a part of me that still has that version, but I can't take out of my head what a friend to me said a couple of years ago. Like, if that team doesn't beat the Dolphins 70-0, are we still as in love with Mike McDaniel as we are today? I think all of this is a big, I don't know. And Frank, if this Dolphins team goes 5-12, knowing that, I mean, they got the NFC South as one of their divisions this year. Like 5-12 would be that's a horrid season for Miami in my mind. Like, they win 7-8 games. Possible. We're not talking about a change. You win 5-6 games, then you've lost the locker room somewhere. And I don't know. I honestly don't know that you can survive that.
What if Tua's out for most of the season and you're relying on Zach Wilson?
Then my frustration is with Chris Grier because at some point, what in the what did you expect? Like you
That's
can
my
only
point, though. That's why I
Yeah.
think Chris Grier is on
Yeah.
a hot seat more than Mike McDaniel is.
at this point. Chris Grier is Charlie Brown running up to kick the football and it keeps getting moved. If your quarterback is not healthy and your quarterback is named Tua and it hits you again, then that's nobody's fault but your own. Above and beyond everything else, that is nobody's fault but your own to me. So I have no grace for Grier when it comes to quarterback health, but I do have grace for McDaniel when it comes to quarterback health because you can only do so much with the ingredients you're cooking with. It seems unfair, but that's where my mind goes. What
I
about?
think their floor should be higher with Zach Wilson as their backup quarterback. Maybe that sounds crazy. I know that the Jets are not good,
It does
but
to me.
if you were to
better
tell me,
Skylar
if
Thompson,
you
I
were
guess,
to
sure,
tell me
sure.
that a quarterback from the Jets who struggled with the Jets had success elsewhere, I would be like, oh yeah, is his name Sam Darnold? Is his name Geno
that's
Smith?
fair.
This would not be the first quarterback that rehabilitated himself after leaving the Jets. And oh, by the way, Zach Wilson had a year learning from Sean Payton last year.
One ding on McDaniel.
Good point.
and
That's a
I've fought-
damn good point.
Yeah, there's one ding on McDaniel that I have fought against a little bit, but in the back of my mind, it stays there. Their offenses have been absolutely positively unwatchable when Tua doesn't play. Absolutely positively terrible. And you're like, well, Mike, if you're that good of a coach, you should get more out of the offense.
You need a
than
backup
this.
quarterback that's
I
at
get
least average.
I get it. But I mean,
They were on
like
their third
even
string
our
quarterback last year.
our friend Brian Daboll, who I basically just fired 5 minutes ago. Tommy DeVito, they had at least a usable offense with him. When Tua goes down,
For how
the Miami
long, though?
Dolphins are the most unwatchable team in the NFL, and that is kind of a ding on McDaniel a little bit. I have fought back. But come on, what do you expect them to do with these guys? They're not very good NFL quarterbacks, but at the same time, there is something to be said that they are just awful when Tua's out of the lineup. They turn into a college team. It's kind of crazy.
But that's why I think that Zach Wilson, as much as he may not be ready to be full-on starter, should be an upgrade because you had Tyler Huntley and Skylar Thompson and Tim Boyle on their roster last year, and Tyler Huntley and Skylar Thompson
awful.
started games.
That is, you know what? I'm here for this now. This is what I need in my soul this season. I need Zach Wilson to get in about mid-season and have a Sam
you
Darnold
don't.
like
You really
resurgence.
don't. You
Oh
really
God,
don't need Zach
I need this
Wilson
in
to
my
play.
life. I need this. We need to start talking about that. Instead of talking about coaching trees, I want to see quarterback trees success once they leave the Jets.
Can
they
you
blossom.
imagine?
Yeah.
You're right. Can you imagine Jets Nation just being like,
It's kind of
oh
like
my
the
God,
football
again?
gods are like, we are also sorry that you had to play for the New York Jets, and here is our gift as a thank you for making sure that franchise could have someone out there.
We'll put Aaron Rodgers in the Super Bowl. Zach Wilson will be a Pro Bowler. Sam Darnold will
That
also be a Pro.
That's a great point because
Wait,
I hadn't thought about the
Geno?
Aaron Rodgers element here because I was thinking so much more about quarterbacks drafted by the Jets. But if Aaron Rodgers gets that little post-Jets bump of I left, that would be scary.
That would be hilarious.
I'm now in for, by the end of the year, I need Aaron Rodgers, Sam Darnold, Geno Smith, and Zach Wilson all to be top 10 quarterbacks in the NFL. That is a that
I
Brandon
wouldn't
Weigel
put your
comes
money
out of
on it, Fitz,
retirement,
but I
you know,
hope for your
yeah.
sake that it happens.
Well, Geno's definitely going to be a top 10. That's the only one I care about. The rest of them can all go to hell.
But of
Geno
course,
top
how
10.
could he not?
Thank you so much. All right, so let's get
Can
to
I just tell
Bri-
you, sorry, quick
Yeah.
interruption. We were talking yesterday on the show. I was on about the Commanders, and then they said something, and I said something about how the schedule is going to be a lot harder for the NFC East this year because the two divisions they play are the NFC North and the AFC West, and those are both really competitive divisions. And then I mentioned how I don't think it's just the Chiefs. I also think the Broncos and the Chargers are going to be really hard to go against. And someone's like, and let's not forget, and the host said, well, let's not forget that the Raiders are in that division. I'm like, no, I was forgetting that the Raiders are in that division because I don't think that they are going to be the level of
Get out.
competitive that the other three teams in the division are going to be.
Are you done? Is that all you had to say?
Testy Tuesday.
So, all right, you know what? Fine. I don't even have a good comeback for that. I'm just, you know what? I'm a little disappointed. I'm a lot hurt.
If I'm wrong, we can rehash this October, November,
we will.
December.
There will be rehashing galore happening when Geno's on his way to an MVP season. No bias there at all.
Ashton Genty's like, what'd you say, Jory?
Yeah,
Barry Sanders
Ashton
2.0,
Genty's going to be Rookie of the Year. Geno Smith is going to be Offensive Player of the Year. I got all this figured out. And then Brock Bowers will be MVP, first tight end. Okay, so what about I don't want to say Bill Callahan, the wrong one. What about Brian Callahan, head coach of the Titans? Frank knows my takes on. I think he's looking forward to not having to hear me talk about Will Levis anymore. But where are we on Callahan? I mean, it's only year 2. So I want to have a ton of grace because it's only year 2. But Jory, it's year 2 and you got the first overall pick in the draft and Cam Ward coming in and he's quarterback and you got this job because it's Joe Burrow. Like, do you think that there's some level of prove it element to Callahan this season?
I don't think prove it. I mean, again, I always think people should prove it. It's what have you done for me lately, league. I don't think Callahan's on the hot seat. I think that this Titans organization has a new leadership structure. There are like 17 general managers are now in the building. And I think that is a group that is on board with Brian Callahan. I also think that when you consider what recently has allowed rookie quarterbacks to succeed out the gate, I do worry a little bit about the roster around Cam Ward and if it's going to be sufficient for him to succeed. But I do think that Cam Ward's gradual acclimation period from Incarnate Word to Washington State to Miami has really allowed him to have a very clear progression in his development and the competition he's playing against. So yes, the NFL is going to be another level, but this is not the first time he's going to have to learn a new offense or adjust to a higher level of competition. And he only got better at each level. So I think that one, Brian Callahan should be given a little bit of time to work with a rookie quarterback given his roster. And two, I think his quarterback should be able to feel comfortable in the league based off what he's done the last 4, 5, 6 years.
I just worry that this is Matt Eberflus all over again, where we're like, okay,
do you guys think everybody is Matt Eberflus all over again?
Most coaches get fired. I mean, most coaches end up being Eberflus.
We haven't even talked about the Cowboys yet, who Matt Eberflus worked for last I checked, and you guys bring Matt Eberflus into every possible hot seat.
It is true. I just wonder, like, you're bringing your coach back kind of a little reluctantly to work with a number 1 overall pick. And I can see a situation where we're in November saying you just wasted his rookie year on a coach that really isn't that good, because there was no Fitz proof of concept that Brian Callahan's a good NFL head coach. Now, I think we have put everything at Will Levis's feet. The Titans too. Well, what could you do? He had Will Levis. Of course he couldn't function. And Brian Callahan kind of played into that by throwing Will Levis under the bus every single week he played. So I think we've just given him that pass. Okay, Will Levis, it was all his fault. Well, here's Cam Ward. Like, this guy, you can't do it this year. You can't be like, well, Cam Ward's obviously the problem. You need to see a lot better offense from the Tennessee Titans. And, you know, one thing when I write these previews, I just have a different view of teams afterwards. The Titans situation is not as bad as we think. You look at their offensive line, and they have a ton of first-round picks and a ton of high-priced free agents on that line. It is not as bad as we think. Calvin Ridley's a perfectly reasonable number 1 receiver. Yes, they have number 2 and 3 is thin. I get that. They have 2 good running backs to help Cam Ward. This is not the barren situation that like the Patriots were last year, where we're like, oh my God, don't even play Drake May because you're going to ruin him. No, it's really not that bad. Like, I get the Titans aren't a very good football team. They're 3-14 last year, but there's enough there where the environment shouldn't be the reason Cam Ward fails. And if Cam Ward fails, I think we have to look at Brian Callahan and say, sorry, kid, we wasted it. We wasted your rookie year like we did, like the Jaguars did with Trevor Lawrence and Urban Meyer, like the Bears did with Caleb Williams and Matt Eberflus, et cetera, et cetera. I think there's a big prove-it year for Brian Callahan, not in wins and losses, because they could go 5-12. And I could come out of the year saying, Cam Ward really looks like the real deal because he's got good coaching and good offensive scheme, all that kind of stuff. I don't think it's wins and losses. I think it's, can you at least show that it was all Will Levis's fault last year? Now that you got a real quarterback, there's progress.
I just like that Jory raised her hand and held it up like the perfect student that she is. Like, this just speaks to the personalities on this show. Go ahead, Jory. What would you like to share with us?
I just want to know, Frank, Fitz, we're going to play a game. Frank, you're going to say this one out. Frank is going on and on about how you shouldn't worry too much about the Titans roster. This is the man who has a power rankings that came out of the teams this year. Can you guess where he put the Tennessee Titans on the power rankings? 1 to 32. Where do you think
32. I think you had him at 32.
Okay. So Frank, how are you going to square right now that you put them last on the power rankings, but we shouldn't be that concerned about the roster?
Maybe
it's Accountability Tuesday.
Maybe it's because of their coach. We will see.
Let me throw a different wrinkle into this, because I hear you guys both on this. I think my problem with the Titans is less about Callahan, and it's more about what their GM situation looks like. And so go back to 2022. John Robinson was their GM in 2022. He was fired rather famously after the A.J. Brown trade, right? Rand Carthon made it 2 years. Now they have Mike Borgonzi as their GM. I think that's important to note, because it was Rand Carthon, but it was also Mike Vrabel, and then they let Vrabel go and they bring in. So, like, my point to this is that this current administration, you mentioned the 17 GMs, but Borgonzi at this point has absolutely no allegiance to Callahan in any way, shape, or form, and was just brought in. So now, organizationally, you are committed, at least in theory, to Borgonzi, and you are committed to Cam Ward. If this season doesn't go well, there has to be a scapegoat. Amy Adams Strunk, the owner of the Titans, is a person that likes to know exactly who's to blame when things go wrong. I just think that in this situation, the reason that it feels prove it to me to Callahan is if it doesn't work right, well, the first thing the new GM is going to do is blame the coach that he didn't hire. That's why I hate these revolving cycles. So I feel like when this team, because they are, I believe, bereft talent around Cam Ward, when they turn around and win 5 games this year, maybe 6 games, will they have seen enough, shown enough that Callahan keeps his job? If I had to bet my house right now, I wouldn't bet on it. I would bet that the new GM then comes in and says, you know what, we need a quarterback whisperer for Cam Ward specifically, and that's what they'll do. They'll go find their Ben Johnson, whoever that is, and that will be the way that the franchise sort of heals everything. It's a GM issue for me, Jory. It's not an Eberflus issue. It's a pace issue in this situation.
Okay,
Still relating it to the Bears.
My last note, to be fair, before we move on, would be that Frank did put in his power rankings or his preseason, off-season assessment of the Titans that he's concerned about Brian Callahan, but he also put his last line in the piece, quote, next offseason will bring some more talent to lift the roster. Because they don't have enough talent right now.
Oh, there's
anyway,
but it's not the 2024 Patriots is all I'm saying. There's some hope there, especially I think the offensive line could be okay, et cetera, et cetera.
All right, we're going to take a quick break. When we come back, we'll continue seeing how many other teams we can fit Matt Eberflus into, including maybe the Cowboys. We'll do that after a quick break. Let's continue the fun here. Eberflus Cowboy comparisons. Let's get to the Cowboys. Shadi Schottenheimer is the coach, and the question.
Did you say Shoddy Schottenheimer?
Yeah, Shoddy. And then I gave him. I
I
realized I called him Shoddy like we're friends. So then I decided that since we're not friends, I should give him the benefit of the doubt of using his full last name.
Okay, sorry to interrupt, but I'm going to. It was funny because right after the Cowboys hired Brian Schottenheimer as their head coach, I went on a New England radio show, and I had been in Dallas when he was there, and everyone called him Shoddy, and I called him Shoddy, so I did this on the radio show, and they're like, what, are you guys buddies? And I'm like, that is what he goes by. Like, no one calls Ezekiel Elliott, so yes, that's what I'm calling him. I'm calling him Shoddy, but continue.
Ooh, I like that. And Shoddy feels just enough like Shorty for a middle-aged white guy that I feel like it's good for,
Yeah,
when
like,
I say that.
Shoddy.
Hey, Shoddy. Okay, now that I've made every Cowboys fan uncomfortable.
Exactly, Frank.
Is there a prove-it element to a coach that we've never even seen? I realize the answer to this is going to be.
Sorry, we have breaking news. The Dolphins are finalizing a trade with the Giants to bring back Darren Waller to Miami.
Oh, what? He's on
And I actually think this is super interesting because when I went to Miami a couple training camps ago, Frank Smith, who I believe is their offensive line coach, he was Darren Waller's tight ends coach in Vegas, and that was like his guy on and off the field. And obviously Darren Waller has had a lot going on off the field in recent years, and Frank Smith was the guy who was really helping him out. So yeah, that is where they are going on the tight end front.
I got to be honest, if you can get the best of Darren Waller in an offense that's creative, you are going to get massive production. Like Darren Waller's a good pass catcher when he's like he went through some stuff off the field that made him sort of
Tony Gonzalez was a good pass catcher. I'm not sure in 2025 I want him as a centerpiece of my offense. Like
fair point.
Darren Waller, wow. Like look, Darren Waller had such a cool story coming up that he's fun. He was a really fun breakout player. It would be cool if he had this like Rob Gronkowski, I'm going to take a year off, come back, and have a good season. Just call me skeptical. That's all.
I'm going to look this up. Stall first. I keep talking about Darren Waller for a second. I got to find it out here. This is breaking news, so we're doing this live. Wax philosophically for a second here, Frank. Tell me more about that.
Also, to be clear, Frank Smith is the offensive coordinator. I got confused because Mike McDaniel is their play caller.
I'm just trying not to make any Kelsey Plum jokes here. Well, you look this up, so go ahead. Go ahead, Fitz.
Yeah, just Miami need to get a WNBA team now that Cleveland's getting one. Lots of options here.
By the way, still angry that Nashville didn't get one. So here's my problem with Darren Waller, and I'm trying to find it here, and I can't find it quickly. So I'll without having the data in front of me, I'll just say this. The one thing about Darren Waller is that availability is the best ability, and that is something that he certainly struggled with. Hamstring issues were real for him, and once his body started to deteriorate, he had a hard time staying on the field, which is part of the reason why when he was traded to the Giants, my Giants buddies at the time were like, oh my God, we got Darren Waller, and it's going to be this epic thing. And I kept saying, if you can get him on the field, there is some element of like the Dolphins rolling the dice for a tight end that they may or may not be able to get on the field with the quarterback that may or may not be able to stay on the field. Like this has ultimate boom or bust potential to me, simply based on the health of it, because Darren Waller certainly over the course of his career has struggled at times to be available for games. That's just real.
And his last real good season was 2020. Like he's 33 years old in September. Like this is, I don't know. Hey, why not? I'm sure it's not costing them anything. Like, why not? He was super, super talented. Like this is a guy.
Yeah, I'm really curious what the Giants are getting back for this.
Yeah, it can't be much. Late round pick swap, I assume. The tops, like it can't be much because they're probably just like, what? Well, yeah, I guess he's still under contract with us.
This feels like this is a half-eaten package of Oreos. Like we're not actually getting a real draft pick, right? Like you're getting like, hey man, I got like some Skittles and Mike and Ike's in the back seat. Like there you go. We'll give those to you. Do we have any of the terms? Has any of the terms
we do
come
not
across?
yet.
Okay, no, we'll keep you updated if we get the terms. Shoddy, and we'll go back to Shoddy, my buddy.
Shoddy,
it's your birthday still.
Shoddy, it's your birthday. Okay, can you be in a prove it year? I know it's the Cowboys, so that's what everybody says. But let's, Jory, I'm going to ask you to be what you always are with the Cowboys: real, fair, and balanced. Do you believe that this is a prove it year for Shoddy on the Cowboys sidelines?
If you're asking me whether Brian Schottenheimer's 2025 success will dictate whether he is back in 2026, I do not think that's the case. I don't think that Jerry Jones is quick on the trigger to fire coaches. I think that he got some of this crazy riverboat Jerry reputation in the 90s, and that's not what he's doing in the 2010s and 2020s. And I think that he believes in Brian Schottenheimer. I think that this is a coach who, from a culture standpoint, is off to a great start. I think that someone mentioned the other day that almost like players have rallied around him in response to how much doubt there was about what Brian Schottenheimer can do. I think to me the biggest question mark is just what's Brian Schottenheimer going to look like as a play caller, because he hasn't called plays in a while. And when he was calling plays, there was a lot of emphasis on the run. And now you have a team with, assuming Dak Prescott can stay healthy, it's Dak Prescott, CeeDee Lamb, and George Pickens should be the features of your offense. Now, I will say towards the end of Brian Schottenheimer's play calling time in Seattle, he actually was the offensive coordinator when Seattle was letting Russ cook, and then Pete Carroll philosophically believed that it was better for the defense, and he's obviously a defensive coach, to have more of a run game. So I don't think that transition from pass to run was primarily a Brian Schottenheimer decision. I think Brian Schottenheimer and Pete Carroll will both tell you, and I say that because they both have told us, that philosophically they didn't see eye to eye on the degree to which the pass and the run need to happen. And so I wonder, I don't think that Dak, CeeDee Lamb, and George Pickens are going to necessarily be the caliber of Joe Burrow, Jamar Chase, and T. Higgins. But I think the Bengals are informative in the sense that their defense really struggled last year, but they were able to stay competitive and win some games late because of that quarterback and two receiver combo. So I would say, okay, well, if you have a defense that should be better than what the Bengals had last year, they still have Micah Parsons, they still have John Bland, they still have some of these guys that should be able to be competitive. And I actually think Matt Eberflus is a very good defensive coordinator, even though head coach was not his strength. The Chicago defense was good during his time. I think that there's plenty of reason why they could succeed, but also a lot of question marks. And for me, it always comes down to, is Dak going to be protected by the offensive line? Because we all know that offensive line has been sort of like the key indicator of whether the Cowboys have had success.
I think a lot of what you said, it makes it a prove it year for Brian Schottenheimer. Not in a way of he's going to get fired after one and done. I don't think that's going to happen. But if we think about, this was a off the wall hire, right? Like nobody was really on board with this. Even Jerry Jones said something like, this is the biggest risk I could take. Like, oh, that's not what you want to hear in an introductory press conference. But okay, Jerry, because he already starts off a little bit behind with Cowboys fans, and that whole market is crazy. We know that. Everything gets dissected. Everything is under a microscope. If he comes out and has a bad season with a lot of the talent they still have, there is a lot of talent on that team, Jory. You pointed it out, and I agree with you completely. Dak Prescott has never had a losing season when he's been healthy. Like, they have dudes. They got George Pickens out. They got CeeDee Lamb. So if Shoddy goes out and finishes double-digit losses or something like that, I think everybody's going to just turn on him. Like, there's no hey, this
But
is
what
Ben
about the fact that
Johnson.
they're
And
playing the NFC North and AFC West, and they're playing in a division with the
I don't
Super
think it
Bowl
matters in
winner
that
and both
market.
teams
I
from the
don't think.
NFC
I don't think.
Championship?
I think that market is one of one when it comes to the NFL. We
Yeah.
treat that team like an SEC team. I my first year at Yahoo, I covered college football, and I couldn't believe how crazy SEC fans were. Every time their team lost a game, everybody needed to get fired. Every player should be released off scholarship. That's how the Cowboys are treated. Nothing is logical. Nothing is rational. Everything is just, oh, Brad Schottenheimer is the worst coach in the world. We need to get rid of him if they're 0-1. Like, we all know that's coming, right? Like, so I think Brian Schottenheimer is already starting behind because he was such an unpopular hire that to prove it, not necessarily for his job, but to prove it, can you win the fans over? Can you go 10-7? And I think that's within a range of outcomes. I actually think they could finish second in the NFC East this year. Can you have that good season where at the end of it, you're like, oh, Brian Schottenheimer is actually a pretty good head coach. We should have trusted Jerry more. I think that's the proof it. Now, he'll be back in 2026 unless the wheels just absolutely fall off. It is just, can you prove that you're the guy going forward and have everybody on your side to say, you know what, Jerry actually made the right hire?
I will say this quickly. Jerry is going to be just fine because Jerry always hires coaches that are better than they get credit for. I looked back at it, and in his entire time hiring coaches, he has literally hired one coach that ever ended his time with the team with the losing record. So for all of the hand-wringing of, oh my God, we suck, the Cowboys fans ever talk about, like, other than Dave Campo, he's never hired a coach that ended with a losing record. So let's just calm it down, Cowboys fans. We all agree, I think, that Stefanski is going to be back. So I want to get one that I think is more interesting. Shane Steichen and Chris Ballard. This one is interesting to me because I really have my eyes open. The Colts weren't as bad last year as I think of the Colts being last year, and that's mostly because their quarterback position was terrible. So how much prove it, Frank, is there to Shane Steichen in your mind for this year for Indy?
A lot. And I don't know if Shane Steichen's a good coach or not. Is he just a guy who was saddled with a really bad pick with the 4th pick of the draft at quarterback? Like, this team went 8-9 last year with the 31st best passer rating in the NFL. That's hard to do. Like, that kind of says, I think he might be a decent coach. Maybe he's a better coach in his second turnaround. I don't know, but I do think this is a make or break for them. And I hate equating like these things with football stuff, but Jim Irsay died, and Jim Irsay, the owner of the Colts, obviously, was big in their corner, especially Chris Ballard, where he really wanted this to work with these guys. He brought them back for another season when that wasn't the most popular decision. Well, Jim Irsay's gone. Do his daughters feel that same way about these two if they have another losing season? I don't know. And I think that makes it even more of a prove-it season because if we're being realistic and honest, it's a new ownership now. And can you get out of this season and say, kind of win them over? So I think I think Shane Steichen has to prove it in that sense. I honestly think he's a good coach. I think he is. I just don't know if he's good enough coach to get the Colts to a winning record with that quarterback situation. And that makes it tough for him going forward to actually survive for 2026.
Yeah, I think I would reiterate kind of like what I said with the Dolphins, that this is yet another Chris general manager whose seat seems hotter to me than that of the head coach. I do think Shane Steichen's seat is hotter than that of Mike McDaniel because I think that you drafted a quarterback with the belief that your head coach would be able to get him where he needed to be, both from a schematic standpoint and from a culture standpoint and willingness to play and succeed. And that's not been the case. Now, you need to give him a little bit of grace because the guy's been injured a lot. But I think that Anthony Richardson tapping out and some of the other issues are going to lead to real questions about Shane Steichen. But if you're Chris Ballard, you've been on the job 8 years. You're 62-69 in that time. You've made it to the playoffs twice in 8 years. You've won one playoff game and lost 2. That's not what you want from your general manager. And he's tried quarterback after quarterback after quarterback. He tried the Band-Aid situation and all the short-term answers. He also tried now drafting Anthony Richardson. It does not seem like that's going to be a successful project. I empathize with him a little bit because any franchise would have been set back from what happened with Andrew Luck, and that's Andrew Luck's decision to make. But obviously, when you think about the way they believed in him, the way he performed, and then how suddenly they didn't have Andrew Luck anymore, you get a little bit of time, which I think is why Chris Ballard has been given time, but I think you have to figure it out. I will also say that given how much is on the line with the new ownership, same family, but like you said, new generation of ownership and the recent lack of success. I think that's why I strongly believe Daniel Jones is going to be starting for the Colts this year, because I don't think that this coaching staff and front office can feel like Anthony Richardson is going to get them the wins that they need. And I think that even though proving you hit on Anthony Richardson would be your best chance, it's also way riskier. And so it would be totally reasonable. And I think that most teams end up like this. If your head coach and general manager are like, we got to save our jobs. We can't put this guy in there. We can't believe in him. And oh, by the way, he re-aggravated his AC joint during offseason activities. And while I don't blame that for him, I do think it's just yet another reason why the team is going to say, can we trust him to stay in the game? Can we trust him to stay healthy? Can we trust him to not turn over the ball? And I think it'll be difficult for Anthony Richardson to gain their trust or regain their trust on all three of those things.
Daniel Jones is going to win the job outright in the preseason. Daniel Jones is going to have a very good season, and the Colts are going to be better than expected. I've got hot takes. Wow. I'm hot takes on the Colts this year. Real quick, before we get out of here, Jory, you got the Waller term. So was it half a bag of Skittles and a bag of Mike and Ike's? What are we talking? Like, just the cookie part of the Oreo with no stuffing? Like, what'd they give up?
I'm actually going to need you to tell me like what Skittles and Mike and Ike's equate to in NFL terms. But yes, the Giants got a 2026 6th-round pick from the Dolphins in exchange for Darren Waller and a conditional 2027 7th-rounder. So 6th or 7th, more current year. And then it looks like Darren Waller is going to be in a highly incentive-laden deal, which makes a lot of sense, up to $5 million. But I'm going to guess it's something like the veteran minimum in terms of what he's guaranteed, if that, because usually when you have a guy coming out of retirement, you really want to make sure that he is not getting paid for performance and attendance that is not there. So yes, high would be $5 million, but definitely a lot cheaper than Jonner Smith.
That's a full bag of Skittles. I'll give you the full bag of Skittles. All right. We'll be back next week. C-Rob will be back here to fight with Frank next week. We'll give Jory a week off from Testy Tuesdays. In the meantime, follow us. You know where to do that. And make sure you rate, review, subscribe. Tell your friends, family, and enemies. Tell everybody to hang out with us. We'll be with you every single week leading up to the season. We're not going anywhere because football never goes anywhere. So we appreciate you giving us time every single week. Have a great week, y'all.